The following program was recorded at the ARC Annual Industry Forum in Orlando, Florida. I'm pleased to welcome Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, Russell Goodman.
Joining me for a conversation today on the economic outlook for automation projects is Craig Resnick, Research Director at ARC Advisory Group. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you very much, Russell. Glad to be here.
Craig, 2009 was a bad year for industries across the board. It must have affected industries in terms of their capital expenditures for automation projects. Just how bad did it wind up being in 2009, especially compared to the previous year?
Well, 2008 was a very, very strong year and certainly probably a record for automation expenditures globally. What we found, though, is that in 2009, ranging from discrete industries such as automotive, you could have ended up being down 30–40%, and obviously the machine tools that support that business. Getting the industries that had fared a little bit better would be industries like in the process industry, certainly oil and gas, energy-related industries that may have been down 5–10%. And then I'd say in your basic hybrid industries, which are food and beverage, pharmaceutical, down maybe in the 15–20% range.
We're getting some mixed signals about the strength of 2010, but what is ARC's perspective on this? Where do you think industry's CapEx output for automation projects is going to be in 2010 versus what we saw in 2009?
Well, what we found is that the industries that fell fastest and the hardest in 2009, such as automotive, for example, have hit bottom, and what we were expecting is probably a slight rebound in 2010. We're talking more like a 2–4% type of growth. In the basic hybrid industries of food and beverage and pharmaceutical, people are continuing certainly to look for different ways of delivering food and pharmaceuticals, so more SKUs and packaging. So we're looking more for maybe a 4–5–6% range. And in the area of energy, especially as fuel prices have began to rise again, that raises the justification for more exploration of energy and also looking for alternative sources of energy. So we're probably thinking more of a 6–7% range. So again, these aren't the stellar numbers that we may have seen in the past going from 2006, 2007, 2008, but at least we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel and seeing us beginning to emerge. So 2010, we're cautiously optimistic as far as automation expenditures.
Still, there are low capacity utilization rates that are being projected for 2010. So given that, what's the incentive for industry to allocate scarce funds for these automation projects that we're talking about?
Well, I think what's happened is that the world has changed in the respect that at one time automation was to help be able to squeeze more product output out of the plant, which is actually what would raise capacity utilization rates. But now the primary focus is on cost reduction. So even if, for example, that you're not going to be making any more product than you had forecasted for 2010 that you made in 2009, but can you make that product can you lower the cost of goods sold? Can you increase the efficiency of the plant? Can you lower the energy consumption that plant uses? So the old thing now is automate for cost reduction, not so much automating for increased capacity utilization.
Continuing our conversation, though, about incentives for industry to allocate these scarce funds for these projects, we have to keep in mind that unemployment situation is projected to continue to be subpar. Given that, that's got to be a drag on the industry. So how are we factoring that into these projects? Well,
what's happening is that unfortunately that the difficult decisions that many manufacturers have had to make to reduce the workforce, we have seen a great amount of knowledge actually leave the manufacturing facilities. So in many cases, that's actually driving the need for automation, because a lot of these knowledge-based systems that keeps the knowledge within the domain of the plant. So manufacturing today cannot really be dependent on knowing that they're going to have these employees for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So the idea is, how do we keep that intellectual property within the plant? And that's actually, kind of driving a lot of these automation projects.
We've been talking about people who implement automation projects, but let's talk about the automation suppliers themselves. Clearly, they were affected by the economic downturn. So what are the adjustments that they've made, and especially in light of projected economic situation in 2010?
Well, what's happened is they've moved from just being suppliers of hardware products, even software products, to a supplier of services. Most manufacturers today, per the last question on unemployment, don't have the resources that they once had or the resources they'd even like to have. But in order for those manufacturers to drive down their cost to remain competitive, they still need a certain degree of services and support that are provided on the plant floor, the shop floor, factory floor. So what's happening is the companies in the automation industry are developing service models. As software is moving from a product to a software as a service model, so is the deployment of automation solutions. It's moving from just selling a customer a hardware or software solution for their automation, and it's now moving into an area where they're actually selling those services. And it moves things from the capital expenditure side of the budget to the operations side of the budget, because where capital dollars tend to be very, very scarce.
Global trends, market drivers. Let's talk about those for just a minute, how that impacts the decision-making process at companies that are thinking about these automation projects.
Well, what they're doing is they're trying to seize upon, again, becoming more efficient, more sustainable. Today, sustainability is not just a matter of being able to conserve energy. There are parts of the world that don't have enough water to manufacture products. So what can we do to make the product with less water? There's issues with natural resources, either scarcity and also the volatility. Do you want to necessarily be hostage to energy prices spiking back to, say, $140 a barrel, or a copper going up to, say, $4 or $5 from maybe where it's been now about at $2? So companies are saying, if we can be more efficient with the resources that we deploy, and what's happening is they're actually now looking at energy as a cost of goods sold. They're now not just saying that's not just an adjunct expense that the plant takes to pay for the energy to drive the plant. They're saying how much energy is consumed for the manufacture of a unit of product. And interestingly enough, it's the oil and gas companies that sometimes are the most aggressive in saving the energy over, let's say, refining and processing oil.
Greg, it's been an interesting look ahead. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Greg Resnick, ARC Advisory Group, speaking with us today about economic outlook for automation projects. Thanks for watching.